Thanks for joining us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. Ahead of his bilateral summit with U.S. President Donald Trump, President Moon Jae-in meets with his business delegation to talk about his plans to make Korea a more investment-friendly country. Are we about to witness an end to the era of quantitative easing, with the European Central Bank appearing to strike a more hawkish tone? And what impact will this have on the Korean economy? We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. We begin with a look at how the markets fared here in Seoul on this Thursday. For more, we have our Lee Joo-young joining us on the phone. So Joo-young, the benchmark Kospi broke through the 2,400 mark for the first time today.
That's right, June. Early in the session, the Kospi touched 2,402.8, marking an all-time intraday high on the back of strong buying by foreign investors and institutions. This comes exactly 50 days after Korea's main stock index broke the 2,300 mark. The index rose due to strong performances by IT and financial stocks. Market giant Samsung Electronics gained about 0.5%, while SK hynix, one of the world's largest chip makers, also rose by just over 1.9%. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi finished at 2395.66, up roughly 0.55% from the previous session. The tech-heavy Kosdaq also closed 0.32% higher. On the currency counter, the Korean won strengthened against the greenback, ending at 1,141.1 won to the dollar. This has been Lee Joo-young for Business Daily.
President Moon Jae-in met with Korean business leaders who traveled with him to Washington, D.C. on the eve of his summit with U.S. President Donald Trump. Moon also attended a dinner hosted by the Korean and U.S. Chambers of Commerce. Hwang Ho-jun reports.
Soon after his arrival, President Moon attended a tea meeting with about 50 Korean business leaders who traveled to Washington, D.C. from Seoul for the occasion of his first summit with President Trump.
여러모로 새 정부의 경제 개혁에 대해서 걱정도 있으실 텐데 결국 요체는 기업하기 좋은 아주 공정하고 투명한 경제 환경을 만들자라는 것입니다.
President Moon noted that he had been labeled pro-labor for a long time due to his experience as a human rights attorney. But the president also said he is corporate-friendly, citing his experience as a lawyer who worked closely with big business groups. President Moon pledged to make Korea a more attractive place for businesses to invest in and implored the leaders to put more effort into creating jobs and promoting Korea as an appealing investment market when doing business in the U.S. He echoed that message during a dinner meeting jointly hosted by the Chambers of Commerce from both countries. About 250 business leaders from Korea and the U.S. attended the meeting. President Moon gave a speech in which he, again, emphasized the importance of creating jobs, but also stressed that his economic policies are in line with those of President Trump. President Moon also called for an even stronger Seoul-Washington alliance. He said it could resolve the security risk on the Korean peninsula and potentially provide a new opportunity for economic cooperation with North Korea. The South Korean leader also expressed hope that economic cooperation between Seoul and Washington would transcend from trade and investments into a strategic economic partnership, and the two countries can pioneer the global market together.
앞으로 한미동맹은 정치, 경제, 사회, 문화 모든 분야에서 포괄적인 동맹으로 한 단계 더 도약할 것으로 믿습니다.
The roundtable and dinner jointly hosted by the South Korean and U.S. Chambers of Commerce were more than just symbolic, as President Moon laid out the importance of economic cooperation between the two countries, especially when observers say the issue of revising this whole Washington Free Trade Agreement will likely take place during the summit. Hwang Ho-jun, Business Daily, Washington, D.C.
And that same business delegation in Washington has pledged to invest more than $12 billion in the U.S. economy over the next 5 years. According to the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Thursday, 52 Korean firms will invest in new plants, upgrade existing production facilities, increase R&D spending, and engage in mergers and acquisitions in the U.S. On top of that, the business delegation promised to buy $22 billion worth of American goods over the next 5 years. Korea's tech giant Samsung Electronics plans to invest $380 million to build a new home appliance factory in the U.S. Now, the move is being interpreted as a response to U.S. President Donald Trump's protectionist trade stance, which is pressuring foreign companies to create more jobs for Americans. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics says it will open a state-of-the-art home appliance plant in Newberry County, U.S. state of South Carolina. The company will invest some $380 million, higher than the $300 million investment predicted by industry watchers. The facility will help create some 1,000 jobs by 2020, says Samsung CEO for Consumer Electronics Division Yoon Boo-gun, who met South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster on Wednesday to sign a letter of intent for the project. Yoon says the company aspires to be the global leader to deliver premium home appliances to its fastest-growing and the most important consumer market in the region. And when the new plant is finally up and running, the Korean company is expected to solidify its lead in the U.S. Already, Samsung Electronics topped the U.S. home appliances market with a 17.3% market share last year, according to data by U.S. market tracker TrackLine. The announcement to build the facility comes on the eve of President Moon Jae-in's summit with his U.S. counterpart President Trump, whose protectionist trade policies are pressuring global companies to generate more U.S. jobs. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
President Moon's policy planning team will set up a special committee to deal with the government's financial and tax reforms in the second half of this year. The advisory team spokesperson said the new tax reform committee will discuss ways to raise more taxes from conglomerates, large stockholders, and high-income earners. At the same time, they will come up with measures to provide tax breaks to small business owners and people with low incomes. Korean firms' domestic construction orders are expected to fall 9% in 2017 compared to a year before, for a projected total of $132 billion. These estimates were released by NH Financial Research Institute, which is forecasting a sharp market downturn in the second half of the year. The market research firm said new government measures to curb real estate speculation and a potential rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve could weigh on overall demand. Demand from abroad has remained strong, with overseas orders expected to increase 23.2% on year to $34.7 billion. More orders are expected from the Middle East, especially Iran, following the lifting of economic sanctions. In recent years, not only is job competition higher than ever before, the wage gap is also growing, with young employees found to be earning only half as much as older workers. Our Elliot Kim has more.
At a recent job fair held by a financial company, well-dressed college students, military personnel, and even high school students showed up.
There are only 100 or 200 jobs available, but 20 to 30,000 people showed up, which means the competition rate is over 100 to 1.
According to Statistics Korea, 12 out of 100 unemployed people in the country had been searching for a job for at least 6 months, the highest proportion seen in 13 years.
There are countless young people suffering from a lack of jobs. I call it a failure in market economics. And when the market fails, the government must step in.
Another issue in the labor market is how wages have a direct correlation to the size of a firm. According to separate data from Statistics Korea, companies with fewer than 50 workers paid their employees an average monthly wage of $2,100 a month. Those between 50 to 300 employees paid $2,750, and those with more than 300 workers, $3,800. Unsurprisingly, job seekers also prefer to be hired by large companies.
I would say I'm looking for a big company because there are clear benefits in salary and welfare. If you get employment consulting, they focus on large companies first and only look at other, smaller companies if that doesn't work out.
Half of those who left their previous jobs and began searching for new employment mentioned low salaries and uncertain company outlooks as the main reasons for leaving. Despite the country's high unemployment rate, young people are reluctant to settle for less and are trying to find lucrative jobs, which are becoming increasingly difficult to find. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
European Central Bank President Mario Draghi hinted that the ECB might start winding down its stimulus in response to Europe's economic recovery. Take a look.
Addressing the European Central Bank Forum in Portugal on Tuesday, ECB Chief Mario Draghi said the European Union is experiencing a newfound confidence that could help unleash demand and investment, and that he's considering unwinding the central bank's quantitative easing program. Although he did caution against a change in the Eurozone's expansionary monetary policy, analysts say any move by the ECB towards reducing bond purchases would put it on a similar policy path as the U.S. Federal Reserve, which first signaled a tapering of its own stimulus back in 2013. Following upbeat comments from the ECB chief, the euro currency rallied en route to its biggest one-day gain against the US dollar in a year, while Eurozone bond prices fell. So are we about to see an end to the era of quantitative easing, and what impact will such a move have on the Korean economy?
And to give us more insight on this, we have Professor Kim Se-won from Ewha Women's University joining us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
So what can we make out of ECB Chief Mario Draghi's latest comments?
Mr. Draghi hinted at possible winding down of quantitative easing in the Eurozone. What he exactly said was any exit from the quantitative easing or stimulus should be made gradually. Since central bankers are extremely cautious on their comments, we can interpret that his speech is a sign of decreasing money supply in the future or the beginning of tapering.
Now, at this point, we heard Draghi actually sounded very confident and upbeat about the Eurozone economy. So how well is it doing in your view?
The three southern European countries, Greece, Spain, and Italy, are not fully recovered from previous economic crisis yet. But if we take a look at the Eurozone as a whole, we have totally different picture. Eurozone has 16 quarters straight positive economic growth, and recently they also created 6 million jobs.
Wow.
And the consumer confidence and business confidence is at its highest level for the last 5 years.
Now, as we just heard in the report, the focus is on whether the ECB will be on a similar path as the U.S. Federal Reserve. So are we about to witness an end to the QE era?
Not yet, because of the Bank of Japan.
Okay.
Actually, U.S. Federal Reserve has been raising interest rate from December of 2015. And one or two steps behind the European Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank is maintaining their interest rate at the negative level from the June of 2014. So this time, if European Central Bank is moving to the quantitative easing, we can say that the two key central banks are moving to the normal monetary policy by getting out of the quantitative easing. On the other side, the third key central bank, Bank of Japan, is even intensifying the quantitative easing from the last year. They decide to decrease the interest rate at negative 0.1% in the short-term interest rate, and even long-term interest rate is maintained at 0%.
Now then, what impact would all these have on Korea's monetary policy, especially in its interest rate direction?
If European Central Bank increases interest rate this time, that's going to be additional pressure to Bank of Korea to increase the interest rate. According to our experience in the past, either U.S. Federal Reserve or European Central Bank raises interest rate, automatically domestic interest rate increases because the foreign investors, most of them are from either European countries or United States, outflows the money from Korean money market. But that is actually not happening this time in 2017. Even with higher interest rate from United States, we have fund inflows from outside of the country.
Okay. Well, but then there are still concerns that the unwinding of QE in advanced economies could trigger the so-called taper tantrum and unsettle the financial markets. So can we expect to see huge sell-offs and increased volatility in the market, similar to what happened back in 2013?
Well, I believe that's not going to happen this time because it is true that there is still going on serious concerns on huge outflows of the funds from emerging markets. But we are seeing that from the beginning of this year, a huge amount of money is inflowing into the emerging markets like Korea, Taiwan, Brazil, and India. So major reason for that is these countries' economic growth is very robust, over 2 to 3%. for example, India's economic growth is over 7% for this year. And also, the political stability has maintained both in developed countries like Germany and France, and in other emerging markets. And at the same time, the emerging markets currencies were appreciated, which is another attraction point to foreign investors.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you very much.
Today marks 10 years since the iPhone made its debut on the market. And our Eunice Kim takes a look back at how one man's dream, encapsulated in one product, has shifted the telecommunications industry and changed the way we live.
An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. Are you getting it?
In the era of Nokia and Blackberries, it was a device, as one former Apple engineer put it, that never should have succeeded. The iPhone, unveiled on June 29, 2007, had no keypad, but a touchscreen, ran on a brand new operating system that was based on a fresh concept, applications. The App Store, rolled out in 2008, turned around sluggish initial sales of the phone and opened up the doors of possibility to any developer, putting the iPhone on track to truly become a handheld computer. 500 apps in the beginning, there are now 2.1 million apps today, replacing physical cameras, calculators, scanners, and maps, and giving rise to new industries and companies like Airbnb, Uber, Twitter, and Instagram. The biggest beneficiary of them all has been Apple itself. Since 2007, the U.S. firm has sold more than 1 billion iPhones and in the process has become the world's most profitable company. The iPhone, as of last year, accounted for 2/3 of Apple's revenue, which has risen 11-fold over a decade.
The almost $1 trillion, the $750 billion that Apple is worth, is due largely to the success of the iPhone.
The iPhone also disrupted the Korean market when it arrived in November of 2009. Despite being the home of Samsung Electronics, only 5% of cell phones in Korea then were smartphones, compared to the 85% today. Noting the runway success, also attributable to Koreans' fast adaptability and the country's high internet penetration rate, telecommunication firms quickly shifted their pay plans to a data-centric paradigm, and Samsung Electronics rolled out its first Galaxy S Android-based phone the following year. Much has changed over the past decade, including Android's outpacing of iPhone's OS in 2010, accounting for more than 5 out of 6 smartphones as of last year. But few will argue it was Steve Jobs' stubborn vision that triggered the shift in entire industries and the choices we make every day. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Traditional flea markets here in Korea have fallen behind the curve in recent years due to rapid growth in online shopping and an increasing number of single households. But that's starting to turn around, thanks to young vendors emerging onto the scene who are opening their businesses in traditional markets, capitalizing on cheaper rent and government support measures. Take a look.
A traditional market in Mangwon-dong in Seoul. Since opening in the 1970s, there have been an increasing number of worn-out stores, with the vendors also becoming much older. This is not just your average stall in a traditional market. The business opened just 4 months ago, and since then, 29-year-old Chun Eun-chul has become the youngest business owner in the market.
Compared to more commercially developed areas, the entry cost was lower. I decided to start my business in the traditional market since there is constant foot traffic here, with customers shopping for their groceries.
Mangwon Market is located in the Yeonnam-dong area, the latest hotspot trending among young people. Therefore, the rent has been skyrocketing. However, traditional markets offer much cheaper rent compared to other properties. Plus, it comes with the benefit of a solid customer base that frequently visit the market.
어디서 드실 거예요?
저 한강 가서 공원에서 먹으려고. 네.
그래서 제가 준비했어요. 한강 나들이 키트.
It's not easy for an outsider to open a stall in the traditional market, so we devoted extra time and effort to put up trendy interior designs and adopt unique packaging. Our stall typically receives an average of 200 customers on weekdays, and the number can double or triple during the weekend.
At this traditional market, young owners are breaking new ground with unique ideas. Currently, 2 new stores up and running, with customers as well as the older vendors in the market all welcoming the change.
I heard this market has many unique stores and a lot of great places to eat.
Before, we used to have older customers here, but now that we have more young people, the atmosphere of the market has definitely changed for the better.
Traditional markets in Korea have seen decreasing sales over the years. With vendors' average age reaching 56, it is challenging for them to compete with discount retail chains and online distributors. Businesses naturally died out with vacancies, but that has been replaced with young entrepreneurs, boosting the market and also helping to lure youth unemployment. Dokdo Traditional Market has made 7 stalls available for young people to run their businesses. They were selected among a pool of candidates who applied for a startup support program launched by the central government's Small and Medium Business Administration last year. Kim Sung-yeon runs a bar in the market that sells craft beer. The government covers the full interior design cost for this young owner and provides nearly $15,000 to cover a year's worth of rent. This may not look like a typical bar being in a traditional market, but the business has been thriving, and Kim opened a second branch just 6 months after starting his business.
Visiting Dokdo Market for the first time after hearing about this craft beer joint. Usually, you don't find many young people running a business in traditional markets, but I can definitely feel a youthful vibe in this bar.
저희 안주 주문할게요. 네. 저희 통닭 하나 주세요. 네, 치킨. 사장님, 치킨 한 마리요.
Kim says it wasn't easy to run the bar at first due to the lack of experience, but he managed to successfully collaborate with other vendors in the market by buying their food and serving them at the bar.
시장 자체가 워낙 침체되고
Dealing with stagnant market conditions was the biggest challenge. I was fairly confident about the beer and wanted to create some side dishes for our menu. Luckily, we have so many vendors selling great food in this market.
Offering our food at their bar helped revitalize our business. We are also motivated from watching other young vendors who work so hard.
Cooperation between existing and young vendors creates a new sense of community.
청년들이 전통시장에 와서 장사도 잘하고 지금 다 우리 시장에 잘하고 있잖아요.
Young vendors are hard at work to make the best of the partnership, receiving needed resources from the market.
청년 창업하고
We're planning to launch an online service that ties old and young vendors together. Usually, older shop owners don't promote their shops on social media because they find it hard to regularly organize and tidy up their stores.
Starting a business is important, but once financial support from the government is cut off, we need a strong existing co-op structure in order to stand on our own 2 feet. We're aiming to create a cooperative network centering on the first generation of young vendors and also including the second wave of young startup entrepreneurs.
1913 Songjeong Market in Gwangju is one example of a market that has undergone a successful generational change. Before, more than 30% of the market space was vacant, but now that has shrunk to below 4%. The market takes in an average of roughly 4,000 visitors a day.
We expect young vendors to bring generational change and lure younger customers to the traditional market. We'll provide ample support to startup ventures so they can trigger positive changes and attract more young customers.
The number of young startup entrepreneurs are on the rise, but the percentage of those that survive the competition is falling every year.
Usually when young vendors start their businesses, it takes up to a year and a half to settle down, and it's vital that the government as well as the market actively support them. In order to revitalize traditional markets, you need a structure where vendors feel a strong sense of affinity to the market and are willing to change and improve themselves.
Traditional markets in Korea are undergoing a transformation with the old and new coexisting in harmony. Many are hopeful that the younger generation will bring back prosperity to these markets, just like the old days.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.